The UFC's Golden Goose is in grave danger. Alex Pereira is booked to fight Magomed Ankalaev March 8th at UFC 313. You know, the UFC might have fumbled the bag with this one, with some uncertainty looming between John Jones and Tom Aspinall. Heavyweight could have been a real option for Pereira. Aspinall Pereira for a vacant title would have been massive, and I'm sure the Pereira fans would justify his ducking of Ankalaev, especially for a chance like that. Personally, though, I'm grateful that we get to see Poatan tested. I'm grateful that Poatan is fighting the true top contender in the light heavyweight division, not someone ranked outside of the top five. Now, Poatan privilege is still a very real thing. Look at how this fight was booked. They had Ankalaev sitting in doubt, wondering if he'd even get a chance to fight against Alex Pereira. And oh, yeah, we're going to give you the fight, but it's going to be during Ramadan. Now, to be fair to Ankalaev, he's done it before, and he's won before during Ramadan, but not an optimal circumstance. He's 2-1 in his 3 UFC fights taking place during the holiday. He lost his UFC debut to Paul Craig while he was fasting for Ramadan. Does have wins, right? The Iwan Kutelaba fight, and also the fight against Thiago Santos was during the holiday. So he has won fights, and he's even gone long against Santos during, a fasting period where it was definitely suboptimal for him. We've seen Bilal fight during Ramadan and have success too, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily fair for Ankalaev. Doesn't mean that he's at 100%. Now, mentally, I'm sure he'll be locked in. He's got the Dagestan toughness inside of him, and I know he wants to be champion. He's confident that he can beat Alex Pereira. You guys remember several months ago, he claimed that he would beat Pereira in just striking. Now, I think that it would be kind of a bad idea to just strike with Pereira. Not that I don't see Ankalaev giving him trouble on the feet, but with such an opportunity, if this fight goes to the ground, we know for a fact Alex Pereira is not a high-level grappler. He may have a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but black belts don't necessarily mean high level on the ground, especially at the highest level in the UFC. I mean, Islam Makhachev is already ready to check that Pereira black belt, and I think Ankalaev may, in the back of his mind, be considering striking with him early, mixing the takedown in, and then probably finding more success there with the striking because of the threat with wrestling. I'm not convinced that Alex Pereira can wrestle with Ankalaev. I'm not sure that he can box with Ankalaev. Magomed Ankalaev is an underrated boxer. Now, I want to get into a bit of an early prediction for this fight. Now, I want to first look at, though, a comparison in recent opponents. We'll first look at the champions. Of course, we got to give the champ the privilege, the Poatan privilege, even in this video. But he deserves it because he is the world champ. Looking at his past 5 fights, the win over Khalil Roundtree, which, to be fair, should have been the easiest of the bunch. It was somebody that was not ranked in the top 5. It was a Khalil Roundtree whose biggest ranked win was against Anthony Smith in the previous fight. And Roundtree gave Pereira hell. He dropped Alex Pereira in that fight, and he put him down with kind of like a glazing wide right hand. It didn't land flush. It didn't hit him clean on the chin. It was just more of a forearm strike. I have reservations about Pereira's durability. Everybody is acting as if, oh, he's at 205 now. He's not cutting the same amount of weight. That was just because he was at 185 that his chin wasn't as good. At 205, he'll eat the big shots. Ankalaev couldn't put him down. I completely disagree. He beat the hell out of Prochazka in the fight before, and it was a Prochazka he had already beaten. The second time, well, a lot more convincing. To be fair, he looked incredible in the Prochazka fight. Prochazka is incredibly flawed defensively. He fights with his hands down for the most part. He fought this Saturday against Jamal Hill, and he was able to win in a good back and forth, and he showed some striking improvement, but still gets hit a lot. And then the fight before that, he caught Jamal Hill and knocked him out. Now we've seen Prochazka beat Jamal Hill. It's a decent win. Jamal Hill's a former champ, but more importantly, he's a ranked fighter. He's good at striking. He's a southpaw as well, as is Ankalaev. The big question mark of his light heavyweight run was the first fight at light heavyweight. Jan Blachowicz took him tooth and nail to the end, loses a controversial split decision. Pereira was on his back, getting controlled in that fight. He looked clunky in the striking for certain moments. Now, it worked out extremely well for the UFC that the decision probably went the wrong way. Unfortunate for Jan, who just can't get a close nod in that one. Can you imagine a world where Jan would have beaten Pereira? We'd be in a whole different MMA universe right now. His hardest fight was against Jan Blachowicz, and he got out-wrestled in that fight. I know somebody that made easy work on the ground of Jan Blachowicz, but we'll get to that. First, let's look at Ankalaev's past five. He's got the win most recently, a decision over Rakic. He looked crafty in that fight. He fought smart. He landed bigger and better shots, and he won every round against Rakic. Sure, he didn't get an emphatic knockout. Rakic was kind of running for the most part. He didn't want to engage with Ankalaev. You can put some of the blame on Ankalaev, but it's also Rakic's fault. Rakic was being more so defensive, right? A lot of the time he was moving laterally against the cage. He did not want to engage with Magomed Ankalaev because I'm sure he was worried about the power on the opposite side. Fight before that, the Johnny Walker win. Starts Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is chinny, but he still made easy work of him. And of course, the fight before that, it was an unfortunate no contest, but it is what it is. He cleanly whooped him when they ran it back. Then you dig into the fight prior, it was a championship fight. This is a while now. It's back in 2022. He fought Blachowicz. He went tooth and nail with Blachowicz, but he finished that fight dominantly, beating the hell out of him from top position, and ends up being a draw. Many felt that he had won that fight. Biggest flaw in that fight for him was his leg kick defense. Now, leg kicks, something that Pereira does rather well. To be fair, though, I have seen, at least in the Rakic fight, more checking of kicks from Magomed Ankalaev than ever before. And I do believe he learned a lot from that fight against Jan Blachowicz. It's easy to look at him and say, oh, well, Jan was chopping the leg, so Pereira can do that too. He's already shown an adaptability and has shown improvements. Another factor is he was only 30. Now he's 32. Right now, this is truly the prime of Magomed. Alex Pereira's 37. And then the fight before that, beat up Anthony Smith. At the time, the win over Smith, a lot more of a checkmark W as opposed to the current Anthony Smith. He was a lot less washed at the time Ankalaev had beaten him up. Now, looking towards the actual stylistic matchup of the fight, let's first talk Magomed Ankalaev. I got to give Ankalaev some hype. I got to glaze him a bit. He's a southpaw with a smooth striking style, and he really strings his boxing combinations together beautifully. He's got a real clean right hook from southpaw, and he's got a good straight left. His guard is good as well. Defensively sound. Head movement on point. Footwork really clean. He's actually a very mobile light heavyweight. He's also faster than Alex Pereira with his striking. Yeah, sure, he doesn't have the same resume in kickboxing, but a lot more of a fluid, movement-based kickboxing style, specifically for MMA, as opposed to Pereira, who, though is an MMA champion, he's the UFC light heavyweight champ, and he won the middleweight belt, but still shows remnants of the kickboxing base. Pereira is elite with kickboxing. Nobody's going to sit here and argue that. Offensively, he is a one of one. He's extraordinary. Defensively, though, be real with me, because I'll be real with you. He's subpar. His head is there to be hit. His hands are relatively low. And let's not forget, he was hurt badly in both Adesanya fights, even in the one that he had a victory over Adesanya in his first title fight in the UFC. He was brutally rocked in round number 1, and then he was viciously knocked out in their rematch. Everybody seems to brush that aside. Oh, well, it was at middleweight. It was at middleweight. That's why he was knocked out. He couldn't be knocked out at light heavyweight. No, he's not cutting that much weight. You sure? Because I'm sure Roundtree hit him with a forearm shot and he went down. He didn't go out, but he went down. Add in that we're sticking with the OG gloves, which seem to land with a harder impact. If Ankalaev connects clean on his chin, he'll be wobbled. Alex Pereira is not a defensive maestro. He's an offensive maestro. He is incredible. His offense is 10 out of 10, but his defense is like a 6. He's got great chopping calf kicks, which, to be fair, That was a vulnerability at one time for Magomed Ankalaev, but I'm not so sure that it is now. I personally think it is not a weakness anymore. So the chopping leg kicks, not a huge factor. And to be fair, when a southpaw fights an orthodox fighter, it's a less viable weapon, but still an option for sure. You can use the lead leg or even throw the rear leg to the lead and make it awkward and like really attack on the inside. Sometimes it hits more shin when doing so, but still could do damage. The death touch of the left hook from Pereira is a one of one. He's never out of a fight because his power is just something that is one of a kind. It's rare power. He's definitely up there with heaviest punchers ever in fighting, all combat sports. But I have a hard time picking him because he lacks a well-versed tool set. With the secret weapon of the wrestling in the back pocket, with Magomed Ankalaev's crafty boxing skills and his mobility, I see him finding openings on Alex Pereira on the feet, even if he chooses not to engage in wrestling. But it's an MMA fight, so why wouldn't he? Because, oh, it's a gentleman's agreement. He said, oh, I'll strike with you, Pereira. Why? Why? Fight the way that is the most optimal for you to give you the best chance of a W. And I think Ankalaev, the way he carries himself, he's a winner. He doesn't care about the gentleman's agreement. He's looking to win the fight and have a belt around his waist. My prediction is Magomed Ankalaev by TKO. I'm calling it right now. I think Magomed Ankalaev finishes Alex Pereira. And I'm sure some of you are surprised. You're like, no way, Pereira's going to knock him out. Look at how mobile Ankalaev is in striking. Roundtree is a lot clunkier with his boxing. Yeah, he's got the Muay Thai, the overhyped Muay Thai. He's good at striking. He's got power. But he's not nearly as precise as Ankalaev, and he's not nearly as skilled. This is a vast step up in competition for Alex Pereira. He, at light heavyweight, or even when you consider middleweight, has never fought anybody as good as Magomed Ankalaev. This is the biggest fight in his MMA career. This is the most skilled fighter he has ever faced. I don't think he's going to pass the test. Add on top of it, it's the most primed fighter. 32 Ankalaev, 37 Pereira, the oldest Pereira we've seen fight, versus an Ankalaev that seems to now find his flow state. For many years, it seemed like Ankalaev would hold the strap, and I do think he's going to live up to the expectation. Now, I want to quickly preview the betting lines, which already have Ankalaev, the challenger, as a bit of a favorite. He's sitting right now at minus 140, the favorite, over Alex Pereira, who's the plus 120 underdog. I don't disagree with the lines. This is a really hard matchup. Take away the hype of Pereira. Take away the wins and big marquee spots of Pereira in the UFC superstardom and just look at them as fighters. Magomed Ankalaev has a clear path to victory, whereas Pereira, I feel it's more of a puncher's chance. And that's the truth. That's me keeping it real. That's me keeping it super real. Now, Magomed Ankalaev doesn't show a lot of personality normally. This has been a gripe I have had with him for years. But leading up to this fight with Pereira, he's talking some trash on Twitter. Check this out. See you soon, Ankalaev. Look what Ankalaev said. You just signed your death certificate. I'm going to punish you for ducking me. I'm going to make you look like a guy work in a tire shop, not professional fighter. Ankalaev was cold with that. Ankalaev is channeling an inner savage. Look what else he said. Alex Pereira, he goes to all the UFC fight to get free alcohol and get camera time. On the other hand, I've been training so hard. March 8th, alcohol not help you. Chima. Ankalaev's talking some shit. I like Ankalaev talking trash. Ankalaev's confident leading into this fight. Ankalaev's been in there with great opposition. He's beaten a lot of good fighters. Like outside of his last 5 fights, he's still got good wins in the light heavyweight division. He's beaten Nikita Krylov. He's beaten Volkan Oezdemir. He beat Kutelaba when Kutelaba had hype. He's been around for a long time, and he's been a guy that many thought of as the best light heavyweight on the planet for years. I mean, even when Glover had the belt, the thought was Ankalaev could beat him. The dream fight at one point was probably Ankalaev versus Yuri Prochazka. Now, there's been a big delay in Ankalaev getting his chance. This is a wild one. This is a great fight. I love it. And when you think about what happens next, assuming Ankalaev wins, you'd assume UFC jumps right into a rematch because they want Pereira with the chance to get the belt back. And with the puncher's chance always being there, they're going to give it to him. I know that the UFC is upset that they had to book this fight. They could have surpassed it and tried to do the Aspinall fight at heavyweight. And there was even rumors of a Volkov fight, which I'm so happy that didn't happen. But then the ducking narrative would have stuck harder. I think the best have to fight the best. And the UFC's model is built upon you fight the number one contender. This is not boxing where you pick and choose super fights and dodge the best guy in line because promoters aren't matching up. No, you're under the same promotion. This ain't boxing. Best fight the best. And I know Dana White and the UFC are panicking because right now, in an era where, you know, there's some stars, but Pereira is up there leading the heap, like him, Makhachev, Topuria, biggest stars right now. I think Ankalaev's going to throw a monkey wrench in all the dream plans, like John Jones calling for Pereira. It's like, buddy, he's got to deal with Ankalaev first. And there's no guarantees. I don't think he's winning the fight. The truth is the UFC is going to lose so much money if Ankalaev is champion because the American fan base doesn't seem to have a liking towards him. Now, it's because he's shown minimal personality. I hope that Ankalaev takes advantage of this massive opportunity against Pereira and shows us a little bit of who he is. I like what I've seen on Twitter already because prior to the trash-talking tweets that we've started to see this year and probably over the past 6 months from Ankalaev, he's been a bit of a Dagestani robot. But I'm glad he's making attempts to change things. And I feel as though if he does go out there and beat up Pereira, the real MMA fans, the real fans of the highest level of the game, they'll start to like Magomed Ankalaev. And I do think he's a marketable champion. I do think that he is en route to becoming a dominant champion. Because if you look at the light heavyweight division, does he not lay waste to all of the Pereira victims too? Who's beating Ankalaev? The only question would be maybe Pereira. But I don't feel that's a thing. And at minus 140, these odds are close. And I'm sure the Poatan fan base is willing to throw down at some plus money Poatan for their boy. And I think the line might get even closer. I really think that Ankalaev is a sleeper bet. Now, UFC 313 as a whole, I have to give the UFC praise right now. I have to give the UFC immense praise. This card is looking stacked, and it's not even done yet. They only got 10 fights. Pereira, Ankalaev, amazing. Gaethje, Hooker. I don't need any other fight to even be good, and I'd still be stoked for the card because Gaethje and Hooker's a banger 5-round co-main event. I love that fight. I'm leaning towards Gaethje, early pick. Less in-depth of a breakdown, though, for that fight. Lemash Lucindo is one of the most badass women's fights right now. Ferreira Petrosian's a good striking matchup. There's some fights on the card, but there's good matchups, man. Petrino going up to heavyweight against Janiz. He better wrestle in that fight. I got too many questions around Petrino, but Joshua Van, Bruno Silva, sick fight. That should be on the main card of the feature prelim. Joshua Van's one of the hottest prospects on the come up right now. This card's amazing. UFC 313, I am so excited for, especially with the dud of a card we have in UFC 312, which is trash. I'm going to do a video talking about UFC 312 in the coming days because I can't handle that horrendous card. They're disrespecting the Australian fans. My God. Chat, people watching, subscribers, let me know in the comments. Do you agree? Do you think Magomed Ankalaev is the kryptonite to Alex Pereira, which is what I believe? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, if you have nothing to say in the comments, but you appreciate this content, you want to boost the algorithm, W in the chat to boost it for your boy. If you have not yet, smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the post notifications too, because you don't want to miss a video or live stream. I got content coming every single day covering the UFC, and I am so stoked for this fight. I'm like giddy. I feel like I'm 12 years old right now watching the UFC. Pereira Ankalaev, amazing. I'm so happy they booked it. No more ducking. The UFC made it difficult. They're definitely trying to screw Ankalaev a bit by forcing him to fight in the middle of Ramadan. Ramadan starts what? February 29th? 28th, excuse me. And it ends March 29th. So he'll be right in the middle of it. So some of his training camp, he's going to be fasting. But I think Ankalaev's going to be all right. And I think Ankalaev's going to win the fight. And I think he's going to show the true level of this Dagestan savage at light heavyweight. And I think he lives up to what was once expectation, and I believe it still is. And he gets the belt over Alex Pereira, and I think he ends the hype train. Guys, I'm so damn excited. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'm signing off. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.